Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam and I'm a hairstylist based in Los Angeles and also a Bellamy educator. Today we're going to be doing a flex weft install, one row from start to finish, and these are the key points that we're going to be hitting. We're going to be covering tools, your beaded foundation, how to adhere that weft onto that foundation using your anchoring stitches, blanket stitches, and also that finishing anchor stitch. So let's start off by talking about our tools and what I'm going to be using. So we're going to be using our Bellamy silicone lined beads, and we have matched these to our client's base color. I'm also using red thread today. I love to use nylon thread. I typically will match that to my client's root color as well, but I am using red for educational purposes, and your nylon thread is also going to be Bellamy Professional. The pliers I'm using today are going to be from Hair Made Easy, and then I'm also going to be using needles. These are just Amazon needles, and I prefer these because they are a little bit smaller. I find them easier to use, and because they are thinner, they really do a great job of piercing through that flex weft. So I've already sectioned off my head. What you're going to notice is this section here is now going to be around 2 inches above the nape, because what we need to remember is with our client, on a real client, we would have one little nape row here, which would be 1 inch above the nape. So we would have a nape row and then 1 inch above that. That is when we're going to start our second section, because this essentially would be our second row within the install. Our row is also going to sit about 1 inch above the ears, so either side we will have 1 inch above the ears as well. If they are someone that has finer hair, you might actually need to work a little bit higher, and then that way when they wear their hair up, they still have really nice coverage. So now that that's all sectioned off nice and clean, I am going to go into my beaded foundation. Our beaded foundation, we're always thinking about dropping down for density, so we drop down for density depending on whether our client has fine, medium or thick hair. Thicker hair, you'll have less dropping down for density. Finer hair, you will have to drop down more, because we need more of that finer hair within our section to accommodate the weight of that extension. So dropping down for density, I actually always start here and I work my way to the sides, and then what I do is the width of my section, I take my thumb and I just hold it up against here, so the width will be the same width as my thumb. Whenever we're thinking about our beaded foundation, we are actually taking those sections a little bit wider. The reason for that is because we want to make sure that when we pass our needle down to do those stitches, we have enough room for that needle either side. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to take my looper tool and I'm going to pinch, slide the hair through, make sure that I don't have any little crosshairs, push up that bead, and then just drop it down. And then now I'm going to take my pliers and I'm just going to clamp, clamp, clamp. Make sure that that's nice and secure. Then now I'm going to take my second section, making sure everything's nice and even. Take my bead, and then keeping everything high and tight. I never want to drop down because I don't want to create any teasing or back combing within that section. And then I'm just going to clamp, clamp, clamp. Make sure it's nice and secure. So I'm going to show you what we don't want to do within our beaded foundation. So I never want to take my bead here and then slide it up from here, because if we do that, can you see all of that teasing and back combing is what we're going to create. So that's why we like to keep everything high and tight, and then when we are clamping down, that's when we can go in and readjust. So making sure everything is nice and even. Take my looper tool, pinch, and then slide that bead up here. So everything is sitting nice and high and tight. And then when I go in and clamp it with my pliers, I can then secure it. What we want to look for as well is that movement, right? We always want that nice fluid up-down movement. We don't want it to feel like it's pulling or tugging. We want it to be nice and fluid. So I'm always checking for that throughout as well. So now again, just making my way all the way around, making sure that my sections are nice and clean and consistent, because I know that the more consistent and clean my sections are when I'm doing my beaded foundation, the cleaner all of those stitches are going to look. Grabbing my pliers, and then I'm just dropping that down, clamp, clamp, clamp. Continuing to work my way around, and then as I work my way to the front, that's when I now need to start thinking about where that section is going to end, because we want to make sure that we're not going too much into that hairline. Usually with the hairline, we want to keep it about an inch away from the hairline, and then that way we know that that client can wear her hair up without any problems. So as I work my way forward, that's when I'll start to think, okay, where am I going to end it now? But again, just working my way through, continuing all the way around, making sure everything is nice and neat. If I have any little crosshairs within my section, I just use the end of my comb to move it out the way so that it's not in my way. I don't want any crosshairs in my section, because when your client is wearing it, that's when it can start to feel really uncomfortable. So we want to make sure that everything is nice and clean, no crosshairs. Like you can see here, I'm just sliding that out the way with my finger. And then just clamping that into place. How do you know if you've clamped down enough? How you're going to know if you've clamped down enough is you'll see that silicone is exposed. So that silicone will pop above and under the bead, and that for me is an indicator that I've clamped down hard enough. If you do have problems with slipping of the beads, a lot of the time that could be to do with the fact that you haven't clamped down enough. You haven't clamped down hard enough on those beads. So bear that in mind when you're clamping. We want to make sure that they're nice and secure, not uncomfortable, secure. That's what we're always going for. Making sure I have no crosshairs, and then just clamp, clamp, clamp. So I'm starting to come towards the end now, so I'm just thinking of where I want that end bead to be. If you feel like by doing 2 beads here it's going to really push into that 1-inch perimeter, then stop at 1. It's better to have more room between where that hairline is and where your weft ends or starts than be going too much into here, and then you run the risk of putting it on really delicate areas of the head. The hairline always has finer hair and it tends to be more fragile. That's why I tend to keep about an inch away from there. So I'm going to go in, and this here will probably be my final bead now. Slide that up, get rid of any little crosshairs. I don't need those in my section, and then clamp, clamp, clamp. And then now I'm just going to move my head round, because then that's when I can begin to continue that foundation all the way round on this side. So now I can begin same as what I was doing with my other ones, dropping down for density, making sure that I have enough hair within this bead to support the weight of the extension. As a rule of thumb, typically we're going to drop down 1/8 of an inch for thick hair, 1/4 of an inch for medium hair, and then for finer hair you're going to be dropping down more like 1/2 of an inch. I always try and keep everything as consistent looking as possible, because I know that the more consistent I'm being here, the more consistent those stitches are going to look when I sew everything down and into place. Again, sliding that hair through my looper tool, making sure I don't have any little crosshairs, and then sliding that bead up and into place. And then just with my pliers, I'm gonna clamp, clamp, clamp. Keeping everything nice and consistent throughout the head. My section is about the same width as my thumb, and then I'm just going to slide my bead up and into place. And then clamp, clamp, clamp all the way around. Making sure everything's nice and clean. I don't have any crosshairs always throughout. That's just the one thing I'm always consistently looking for, is making sure I don't have any crosshairs, because within a weft install that is going to cause a lot of discomfort. If there's any that I don't like the look of, like this one to me looks a little wonky, I'm just going to pop it open and just slide it to where I want it. Yeah, that looks way cleaner. And then now I'm just going to move her a little bit. And you see now we're coming towards that hairline, right? So we want to make sure that we're about an inch away from that. So I know that I probably now have room for about 2 more beads here, and then I'm good. Making sure everything's nice and clean. And then I'll just do my final bead here. Okay, so one little tip that I have, whenever we're feeding our hair through that looper tool, we always want to do this movement as opposed to that. Because when we do that, that is going to damage that looper tool and it can break it. So we always want to do that movement there. So you can see I'm pinching, pulling my looper tool through, and then I'm just sliding up, balancing it on my pinky, and then with my pliers I'm going to do one final clamp, clamp, clamp. And that's it. We have completed our beaded foundation. So now we're ready to install our flex weft. All right, so now we are ready to install our flex weft. This one I've already cut, so I've already pre-cut this, but typically when you get a flex weft or a volume weft, it's gonna come as one long row. So it will come as one long row, and then all we have to do is we like measure it against our foundation, and then we just trim it to the length that we want. So you can see mine is actually long enough, it's perfect. I don't need to cut anything off. So now that that is all prepped, I have two options. I can pin it onto the foundation, or I can go in and do a few of my starting stitches off the head. What I like to do is I'll pin everything down first and then I'll go into my stitching. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to grab my clips. These are from Framar. They're the tight tension clips. They're amazing. They hold those wefts so well. So I'm just going to line that up with my foundation, and then with my clip I can just slide that into place, and then just really make sure that I'm securing that weft onto the foundation before I stitch anything down and into place. Cool. She is ready to go. Make sure that's nice and clean. Okay, perfect. So now let's get into our stitching. So this is going to be our standard flex row. We're not doing any sort of an invisible row or anything like that. This is just going to be a really straightforward, easy way that we can install our flex weft and even our volume weft using a non-hidden row technique. So now let's go into our stitching. We are going to be using red nylon thread today. The reason that I'm doing red is because I want you guys to be able to see those stitches nice and clearly. Typically on a real client, I would be matching that thread to their base color or the root color of the weft. So for example, on my client, I'd probably be using the same colored thread as I did with my bead. The beads were auburn brown, so most likely I'd use an auburn brown thread. But today I am going to use red just so you can see those stitches nice and clearly, and regardless of what color it is, I always use nylon thread. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to do one wingspan and then two wingspans of thread, and then I can just trim off the excess. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to thread my thread through that needle, and then I'm just going to let that needle hang down like a pendant, and then I'll bring up these two pieces here. Make sure that they line up perfectly, and I always make sure that my thread is nice and straight. I don't want any sort of looping or tangles because then that can affect that install. So once I'm happy with how that's looking, then I'm just going to take these two pieces, put them over my index finger and my middle finger, and I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to pull those loose threads through and then pull. And then you can see I've created a really nice triple knot here. And then can you see this excess thread? I'm just going to trim that off. And then now that is all ready to go. So let's get into those stitches. So we are going to start 1 inch in, which is about 1.5 beads. So we're going to start here. For these stitches here, we're not actually going through any pockets of hair. We're purely going through the weft itself. So I'm going to just pierce that weft here and then just pull that through, because I want that knot to sit inside of the weft. And then now I'm going to do another stitch through the top. These are going to be called our candy cane stitches or whip stitches. The reason I call them candy cane is because it looks like a little candy cane, but they are our whip stitches, and we're just going to do 3 of these. 1, 2, 3, and you can see that brings us nicely onto the outside of the weft. So then now we can begin our anchoring stitches. So making sure that everything is nice and secure, I'll just go in and pin that down. So now I'm going to drop my needle down through this pocket of hair. Can you see here? So it's going down through that pocket and piercing the back of the weft, and I'm pushing everything to the side, and then I'm going to bring that through, and then that just creates a stitch that is going to sit on top of the weft. And then now I'm going to go up through that same pocket of hair, and then again I'm just making sure I'm piercing the back of the weft, and then I'm going to pull that stitch through. So what that has done, it's created a really nice secure stitch that's going to lock that corner into place. So we've got a stitch at the top and a stitch at the side, so it almost looks like a little L. And then now we can begin sewing. So now for our blanket stitch, we're going to start in this second pocket of hair right here, okay? So we're taking our thread and I'm going to carry it across using my thumb to feel for that bead. I'm going to drop my needle down through the pocket of hair and under the weft, and then can you see that loop that I've created? I'm going to pull it through that loop, and then now I can pull up to secure. Carry my thread over, drop my needle down through that pocket of hair and under the weft. At this point we're not piercing through anything, we're just dropping it down and under the weft. Pull up to secure, carry my thread across, drop my needle down through that pocket of hair, under the weft, and then I'm just bringing that stitch up to secure. Same thing, dropping my needle down through the pocket of hair, under the weft, I'm not piercing through anything, and then I'm pulling that up to secure. All the time I'm always pulling up to secure because I really want those stitches to sit that on top, right? I never want that to drop down. Carrying my thread across, dropping my needle down under the weft, pulling up to secure. So now can you see what happens if I drop that needle up down at an angle and try and pull up? Can you see it's creating a split in the weft? We never want that because we want our weft install to be as full coverage as possible. Whenever we're dropping our needle down through that pocket of hair, we're dropping it down nice and straight and then bringing it up. And then my thumb will support that needle to stop it going at an angle or dropping down too far. If you drop down too far, what can happen is you begin to pick up hair from underneath as well. Can you see like that? And then that can get really, really messy. So we always want to use our thumb to control that needle as we're bringing it down. Carrying my thread across, dropping down and using my thumb to catch that needle as it's coming through. And then I'm pulling up to secure. And I'm just going to carry these on all around the head until I get to the other side. And these are going to be our blanket stitches. When we're doing our blanket stitches, when we're pulling it up, we always want to make sure that we're pulling it up to secure. The reason that we want to pull it up is we want that stitch to sit here. If I pull it down, can you see that that stitch now is starting to sag, and then it's going to look messy and sloppy and not nice and tight and secure. So we always want to make sure that we're pulling it up, and then with my hand I'll just support the weft and pull up. You can also support the weft here and pull up. Always making sure we're pulling up so the stitch sits nice and snug on top. So now I've reached my end. One little trick I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to pierce through the back of the weft here, and then that way it's brought me right to the end. And then if your weft is a little bit longer, can you see my weft is a little bit longer than my foundation? I'm just going to go in with my cutters and I'm just going to trim off that excess part of the weft that I don't need, and then I can just put that to one side. Save that because you can make it into a keratin. So then now I can start my ending anchor. So we are going to drop down through that last pocket and we're going to pierce the back of the weft, and then we're going to pull that stitch through. This is exactly how we started it. And then now I'm going to go up through that last pocket, feed that through, and I'm going to pierce the back of the weft. And now that has locked the top of my weft and the side of the weft in place. And then now I can just go in and do my whip stitches. So I'm going to do exactly like how I started. So if we start with 3, we end with 3. So I'm going to do 1, 2, and then now on my 3rd and final whip stitch, I'm going to go halfway through my weft. And then, actually, let me do it here. I'm going to go halfway through my weft, and then with my thread, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then I will pull that up to secure. And that's created my triple knot. And then now, I'm going to just drop my needle behind the weft, like that, and then that way I'm pulling that knot behind so it's not sitting on top and irritating my client. And then I'm just going to trim, and then now I can just go in and tie 3 times, making sure I don't have any little crosshairs. I'm going to go 1, 2, and 3. Trim off any excess thread, and there we have our flex weft install. One thing I always do, and I'll just check underneath, make sure that I don't have any little crosshairs, none of that natural hairs got caught in the stitch. So I'm just going to flip everything up, and then I just let the beads down, and then that way I can just check that I don't have any little crosshairs. If I do feel like I've got any of those stuck, just with the end of my comb, I can just gently remove them. Making sure it's all nice and clean. Okay, so here I've got a little few hairs stuck, so I'm just going to go in and slide those out. You can see here, I'm just sliding them out. If there's any little hairs like that, I can just gently slide them. Come around here. Here I can see a few. Just to make sure it's nice and clean. Once I'm happy, I'll just drop that down, and then I can move on to my next row. Okay, one thing that I always get asked about is removals. Removals with your weft install are super easy and really straightforward. As long as your client has looked after their extensions at home and there's no matting or tangling, you're going to find that removal so seamless. So let me show you how to remove a flex weft. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually flip that weft up. So I'm just going to take the weft, flip it up, and then I like to just separate the beads from the weft. So I'm getting all of those beads, flipping all of that down, making sure that's all out of my way. And then what I'll do with this hair is I'll just take a clip and I'm just going to clip that out the way. And then now all I have to do is take my pliers and unclamp all the beads. And what you can see is with my pliers, the ones that I'm using are from Hair Made Easy, and they have 3 different openings. So I'm going to use that second opening just to pop open that bead. So I'm just going to pop open the bead. I'll do this all the way around, just popping open those beads. It's so easy, it's so quick. Just going in here, popping open. Me come round, and then I'm just going to pop. Yeah, and then now I'm just going to slide out all of those beads. Okay. And then I can just take that clip, flip that down, and then just gently slide out my weft. So easy, look at that. That's it. Easy peasy removal. And then I can even just go in with my comb or my brush and then just comb out that hair. Perfect, and that is super easy, quick, and then now you can go in and reinstall your client's weft if you want, or now is the perfect opportunity to do a full head color, Brazilian blowout, just a wash and a blow dry before the install, whatever it may be. Thank you guys so much for watching, and please, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment below. What was your favorite part of this video? Thank you so much for watching.
We're done, and that's a wrap.
Bye.